When you open an app on your phone, swipe the screen, or receive a notification, it doesn't just happen by magic. It's all thanks to the unseen core system inside your phone, the operating system, or OS. The OS acts as the servant inside your phone. It manages everything from the display on your screen to the background operations you never see. Behind every phone brand you use lies a long, complex, and fascinating history of operating systems. What was the journey of the Handphone OS like? Let's dive in. S30 and S40, Nokia and the feature phone era. We start in 1999. Before the world knew what a smartphone was, Nokia reigned supreme with its S30 and S40 operating systems. This OS was simple. It only handled the basic functions of a phone: calls, SMS, a calculator, a camera, and a few legendary games, like Snake. This OS powered classic Nokia phones like the Nokia 3310 and their Express Music series. Their main strength? They were incredibly stable and durable. Nokia phones with this operating system could last for years without a single error. SymbianOS, the first smartphone king. Next we have SymbianOS, originally developed by a company called Symbian and later acquired by Nokia. It became popular from the late 90s to the early 2000s. Symbian was the OS that introduced many people to their first smartphone, long before the iPhone or Android were born. Symbian supported multitasking, app installation, file management, and even megapixel cameras. In fact, Symbian was the first smartphone OS capable of taking a 5-megapixel photo. It was widely used on Nokia's N and E series, as well as some smart devices from Sony Ericsson and Samsung. However, Symbian had major flaws. It was difficult to develop for, the interface was rigid, it suffered from high fragmentation, and it was slow to adapt. Poor development management ultimately caused it to fall behind and lose the battle to Android and iOS. Fun fact, apps for the Symbian OS were often cracked or pirated and shared via Bluetooth and memory cards. BlackBerryOS, symbol of status and security. Developed by Research in Motion, BlackBerryOS was a favorite in the business world for a time. BB's distinct features were its physical QWERTY keyboard and its incredibly fast push email system. At the time, presidents and important world figures used BlackBerry specifically for its security. The encryption was so powerful that the governments of India, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE became concerned because the communications couldn't be intercepted. Unfortunately, once the touchscreen became the main trend, BB struggled to adapt. They held on to the old model for too long and lost the competition to Android and iOS. Windows Mobile and Windows Phone, Microsoft's late attempts. Microsoft first debuted in the smartphone OS space with Windows Mobile in 2000, using a mini desktop approach. Then, in 2010, they introduced Windows Phone, bringing a refreshing, dynamic interface called Live Tiles, those square animated boxes, to compete with Android and iOS. The main weakness of Windows Phone was its lagging app ecosystem. Many popular apps were either unavailable or arrived late to the platform. Although the Nokia Lumia series had fantastic camera quality, it wasn't enough to save the platform. The Lumia 1020 had a 41-megapixel camera and is still considered one of the best phone cameras ever made. iOS, the closed system that changed the world. Apple released the first-generation iPhone in 2007 with iOS as its operating system. This operating system adopted a closed approach, meaning it could only be used on devices made by Apple itself. This decision made the iPhone a solid phone with high performance, stability, and incredible ecosystem integration. Plus, the introduction of the App Store in 2008 rapidly grew the mobile application economy. With a strong ecosystem and consistent system updates, iOS remains a major smartphone player today. To this day, you still can't install iOS on a non-Apple device. That tradition survives. Android, the OS that conquered the world. Android was initially developed by a small company called Android Inc., and then acquired by Google in 2005. The first public version of Android was released in 2008 on the HTC Dream smartphone. Android is Linux-based and open source, offering immense flexibility. Anyone can use Android, from large manufacturers like Samsung to local producers. This allows Android to reach all price points. from budget phones to flagship devices. Early Android versions were named after sweets: cupcake, donut, eclair, froyo, and so on. But this tradition stopped with Android version 10. Maemo and Meego, Nokia's genius and great hope. Let's pause for a moment to discuss Nokia's genius project. Maemo, 2005. Maemo was a Debian Linux-based OS developed by Nokia, initially for their internet tablets, not smartphones. In 2009, Maemo was finally used on a true smartphone, the Nokia N900. It had a desktop-like windowed UI, supported true multitasking, a Linux terminal, and could run Linux-based applications. That was incredibly rare for a mobile device back then. Fun fact, people ran PlayStation and DOS emulators on the N900, and some even turned it into a mini Linux-based server. Maemo eventually merged with Intel's Moblin to form Meego in 2010. Meego looked modern, was fast, and had huge potential. Sadly, the project was short-lived because Nokia decided to switch to Windows Phone instead. The only commercial Meego product was the beautiful Nokia N9, which is now a collector's item. Another fun fact, Meego was one of the first OSes to use full, buttonless gestures, way before the iPhone X released a similar concept. HarmonyOS, the new challenger. Our final major player is HarmonyOS, first announced by Huawei in 2019. This was a direct response to restrictions on accessing Google services. Huawei claims HarmonyOS is not just an Android alternative, but an all-in-one system that can run on smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, TVs, and even IoT devices. Its microkernel-based architecture makes it lightweight, modular, and easily adaptable to different types of devices, with or without a screen. Its strengths include great device integration for an excellent ecosystem, and a UI design similar to Android, which makes it easy for users to adapt. However, as a still-developing OS, it currently suffers from less global developer support compared to Android and iOS. By 2023, HarmonyOS was installed on over 700 million devices globally, and it's even used in smart cars as the in-vehicle entertainment system. Spin-offs and alternatives. Finally, let's quickly review some notable spin-offs and alternatives. Tizen OS, 2012. A joint project by Samsung and Intel. It's used in smartwatches, TVS, and some low-end Samsung phones. It's still used in almost all Samsung smart TVs today. Sailfish OS, 2013. Developed by Yalla, carrying the legacy of Meego. It's community-driven, focuses heavily on privacy and gesture navigation, and can run Android apps thanks to a special compatibility layer. Firefox OS, 2013. Created by Mozilla to build smartphones based on web technology. Market response was very low, and the project was stopped just 3 years after its release. Ubuntu Touch, 2013. Canonical's project with the idea of one OS for all devices. When connected to a monitor, a phone running Ubuntu Touch could become a desktop. A brilliant idea, but perhaps too early for its time. It's now actively continued by the community under UBports. KaiOS 2017, built on top of Firefox OS, but targeted at feature phones. It supports popular apps like WhatsApp and YouTube, even on small RAM non-touch devices. It was a huge success in India and Africa, powering cheap phones like the Nokia 8110 banana phone. Over time, the Handphone OS has evolved from a simple communication tool into a sophisticated platform for work, learning, and creation. Some survived and some went extinct. But every OS has a story, a legacy, and was once a part of our lives. Which OS did you use? Share your experience in the comments below. Like if you learned something new today, share if this content was useful, and subscribe for more interesting videos. See you in the next one.